Hi, I'm Sharon Landon, and welcome to my show, Old Asian Lady. Today, my guest is Caroline Chia. She is the entrepreneur and CEO, senior producer for her own company, East West Entertainment Group. Caroline, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Um, yeah, I wanted to know, you were born in Taiwan, and your family moved to Canada. So can you tell me reasons why your family moved over there?
China.
China. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
they were
Okay.
basically afraid something was going to happen to Taiwan. This is a
Oh,
long time ago. So we left here when I was 6.
six. Well,
So I
that was
grew
about
up,
the same time I left.
yeah, so grew up speaking English and
Mm-hmm.
all of that, and all my formal education is all in English, not in Chinese.
Okay, but when you were six, when you moved over, you were fluent in Mandarin at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and your family environment was all Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And
No,
no, it
not really.
wasn't. Okay.
So, my father is the only one that spoke any English.
Mm-hmm.
So the rest of us, my brother and I and my mom, we had to learn English after we got there. And so, as a general rule, we weren't allowed to speak Chinese at home because it would help us all acquire the language faster. So when we got home from school, everything was in English. So we would talk to my mom in English, and we would teach her what we learned in the ESL class. This is why this is why my mother has terrible English because we taught her
Up to now?
up to now. So yeah, so we learned our English after we got there, and when you're in that environment, you pick it up really quick.
Mm-hmm. So how old were you by the time you were fluent, per se, as a
I
regular Canadian?
I don't really think there's a fluent kind of you don't have a recognition of when you've become fluent. You
Mm.
just suddenly realize that there are fewer words you don't know,
Yeah,
right?
that's something different to think.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, when I was asking my mom after left Taiwan, my American adopted parents, I asked them how long did it take me to learn English. And I know the first year I went to a missionary school, so I was still kind of finding my way.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived in Okinawa for about a year, and then we went to California. And
Mm.
I was in third grade there. And she said by the time I finished third grade there, that I was pretty fluent. So I'm thinking, wow, that's almost 2 years or a year and a half at least.
Right.
But I don't remember that
I,
much about
I don't really
it.
remember that much either because it's like for so many years when you first got there, you didn't understand half the things everybody's saying to you.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of every day is just a little less you don't understand, a little less
Right.
you understand. And then suddenly you're making friends and they're teaching you lots of stuff. So it's hard to pinpoint, but I'd say, yeah, probably grade 3. When
Yeah.
you're 8 years old, you're probably more fluent. You can actually express yourself quite well, I
Hmm.
think. Yeah.
Well, when you were learning English during this time, were you ever made fun of or anything when because you weren't speaking fluent English at the
Oh,
time,
well,
or it was pretty?
bullying was alive and well
Oh,
when I was a kid because we
okay.
were much smaller than the rest of the kids in school.
Mm-hmm.
So remember school pictures? The tall ones stood at the back and the shorties all sat in the front row.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the front row for quite a few
Yeah,
years.
me too. That's why up to now I hate being in the front ever.
So it's not something we can control, right? But
Yeah.
you you basically got picked on. I remember my first year there, we got picked on pretty much every day going to school
Mm.
and then coming back from school. And then we got lucky and we had this big Italian guy who was in grade 6. He was in
Mm-hmm.
our ESL class
Okay.
and he became our
Protector.
enforcer.
Oh, yeah.
So when we were leaving the school, there was a bunch of kids that used to just pick on me and my brother all the time.
Mm.
And so when I forgot his name already, but he would show up, he would walk halfway home with us because we're in the same direction. And so they would leave us alone. Like they didn't follow us after when they saw that we're heading together, right? So they figured just leave it alone. But some days when we were just leaving the school on our own, the kids would just come and ambush us and we'd get picked on, like we'd get beaten up.
Wow.
And we'd go home and, little battered and bruised. And so my father taught us to fight when I was 6.
Okay, so they,
So fist fight,
yeah.
not for real fight. But this is just to defend yourself because people are picking on you.
Oh, you didn't do the martial arts route.
Not
It was
until high school.
Okay.
Yeah. But we did study martial arts. I studied Kyokushin karate,
Okay.
and I have an orange belt.
Oh, orange belt.
So it goes white, yellow, orange. So I've had three
Oh, all right.
graduations.
Yeah, because I remember when I was younger and we were living in Japan, my brother and I took judo, and talking about being picked on, and I just only found this out recently because I had asked my mom about the times before when we were adopted and after, because a lot of the times I don't remember, right? But my brother, I went up to a green belt in judo,
Oh,
and then my brother, actually, he's 2 years younger than I, and was a brown belt. So the colors of the belts are different, I guess,
they're
in different
different.
martial
Yeah,
arts
they
things.
are. They are.
And we were in Maryland apparently at the time, and he was in elementary school and he was getting picked on. And my mom, what she ended up doing was she ended up talking to the teacher, and they put an exhibition, performance for the whole school or the class. And they did the judo type thing where my brother performed and he did the flips and things like that. And she said after that, he wasn't ever picked on before because she told the teacher, he could really beat them up if he wanted to. So these kids started really respecting him and stopped picking on him. But is it just the Asian thing, or they were just bullying? Because none of the other ESL students who
No,
may not be Asian
for
were picked
us, it
on?
was just they just picked on the smallest people or people that they thought they could get away with until you fight back.
Yeah, that's
And then after you fight back, they leave you alone. So I learned this when I'm 6.
yeah.
If you fight back and stand your ground, they leave you alone,
Yeah.
right? So my father told us that we should hurt them. So, you have to hit them to hurt them, not to, not one of these, right? But
Right,
it's like,
right. You got to make it.
you got to make it, you got to make
count.
a real fist. And
Right.
by the way, a real fist is your thumb is outside, not inside.
Oh,
You're
okay.
inside, you'll break your thumb. Your thumbs are outside.
Oh, right, right. Oh, I think I remember when Vince is teaching some fighting scenes
Yeah,
or stunt
yeah.
things that he's talking
So,
about.
and I have big hands
Okay.
and giant knuckles from
Okay. So
not a good thing, right? But I still have them from
from fighting that many.
fighting several years.
Really? Oh, wow. I was lucky. I didn't have that kind of
It's not like
issue.
I wanted to. I'm not a violent person. I'm actually very, laid back. But if you pick on me, you picked on the wrong person. That's all.
Right. So it's just surprising to me because you grew up in Canada, and for some reason, I always thought that the U.S. I always thought, Canada, U.S. neighbors really mellow and friendly because that's what everybody says compared
Yes,
to Americans.
the
But
children are cruel.
oh, that's possibly true everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Children are very cruel. So, yeah. And there was I remember this in grade 4. There was a girl who my public school only went to grade 5, and there was a girl who was years ahead of puberty. I think she was hitting puberty by grade 4, but she was like 5 feet something tall, and she had long blonde hair. Her name was Janice Campbell. And she used to be the queen of the schoolyard. She can go to anything and give me the ball or give me the tether ball or something, right? Like she wanted to play hopscotch, she could take whatever from whoever. And then I fell victim to one of those one day, and she just came over and she just looked at me. I didn't know what she was going to do, and she just pushed me aside. So I went up to her and I hit her like both hands. So we had a fight. after school. I beat the crap out of
This is
her.
not a violent show.
No, no, but I mean, but this is the kind of thing that I've endured in my life, right? So
Right.
it's like I beat the crap out of her. She became my best friend,
Oh,
and
interesting.
she was my goon squad.
Oh, so she really respected you after you stood up because she probably didn't deal with that quite, that often.
Right, but other people in the school are still afraid of her. So suddenly I became the queen. So she
Oh,
picked on the wrong person. I ended up being the queen of the playground after she's my goon squad, right? So, but I didn't bully people around. But
right.
I would actually go and ask them, would you mind giving us, and they'll say, oh, no, 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 here.
What?
You
You
know?
mean you were bullying people
I
in a
did.
nice way?
I
Like,
was doing it. I
can you give me
asked.
some lunch
Yes.
money?
No, I never asked for lunch money. It was always, like tetherball or, you're
Oh,
playing
I see.
Foursquare or something with you need a
Oh, okay,
ball and
okay. So you're the
right. So it's
nice
like
bully
I was I
person.
was I was the nice playground bully, I guess.
Oh,
I
okay.
guess.
All
But
right.
anyways, but you learn all
So,
that stuff when you're younger.
so aside from the challenges that you had in terms of being bullied and things like that, were there any other challenges in your life in terms of being a Taiwanese living in Canada?
Being Asian while living in Canada. It I started my career in the music business, and I ended up going to work for Universal, and they set up at the time it was very popular for all the major labels to set up these little boutique labels. So there was Island Records, there was Virgin Records, so each of them owned by a different major. And then ours, we were setting up IRS Records, who's owned by Miles Copeland, who is Stuart Copeland, drummer of the Police. That's his brother, and he manages the Police. He also manages Sting, right? So we worked for him, setting up a label for him in Canada. So I was one of 4 people handpicked to do this. And I was not quite 30, so under 30 at the time. And after a couple of years, like according to our jobs, we each wore several hats, right? So I wore 2 hats. I was administration and I was also marketing. So when we broke even in a year and a half, and the states had actually planned for us to break even in 3 years, they were in shock. So they dragged me off the plane in LA, and I went straight to a boardroom meeting, a giant board. I'd never met any of these people before, and then they wanted me to explain how is it that we can break even so quickly. I was like, what's the magic formula, right? And I said, I think it's the fact that, I'm marketing, I spend all the money, and then I'm admin, which is also accounting. I'm trying to save all the money. And I said, so, miracle of miracles, we everything was under budget for your entire year for everything, for every department. And marketing is the worst because we're always the ones that go over budget on everything, right? Usually. But because I was also trying to keep the money together, so it was just kind of a weird situation that it just happened like that. And then suddenly you're ahead of the game. So, but when that happened, they offered me a position of vice president in label in Canada. And I couldn't accept it because I'm under 30. And for you to have a vice president label on you, and if you quit that job, you'd never get another job because any other position you take after that is a manager position. It's not a VP level. So it's like a step back. You're never going to go anywhere in this industry. So I hit the glass ceiling like right then and there, right? So
And you feel this is because you were Asian in the industry?
well, it's because I'm Asian in the industry. It's an industry run by Jewish people and owned by Jewish people, right? So I'm not Jewish. I'm female. I'm not male. So prone not to get promoted, right? And I'm under 40. So I'm a triple.
Whammy.
Yeah, it's a triple whammy for me. So where do you go from there? You don't. You don't. You can never leave that job. I didn't like my boss because he didn't trust anybody to do anything. So he was so paranoid that I'm after his job that he was making it impossible for me to actually do my job. And that was one of the reasons I left
Okay.
and came here.
So, it, before that, was the music industry something that you had studied when you were younger? I mean, was that your major or?
No, no, no. This is also one of my hobbies. I was a DJ I was a party DJ when I was 16, and we used to get paid $50 to do a night for, and then you would, oh, $100, sorry. So
That's a lot of
$100,
money back
that's a
then, right?
huge amount of money those days, okay?
Right.
So $50 just to pay for those giant stereo speakers that you had to rent to bring to the party that only fits in the back of a giant land yacht, right? So $50 for that, and then $10 for gas. So you actually made like $30, $40 for the night, plus as much as you can drink. And I'm 16, I'm underage. So weehoo! What a great
Oh,
industry! Pick
no,
me.
no violence or illegal activities on
No,
this
but I
show.
mean, pick me, right? So this is how I ended up wanting to work in the industry. And then so in university, I was a DJ at Radio York at CJRY. Still remember the call sign.
Wow.
And I did the news, and then a guy from CBS came into the building and dropped off some material for us to listen to and see if we'd program. And then I just happened to pick something that I thought was going to be really, really commercial. And then they were a band, not a hit on the planet, still doing the college circuit. So I called the CBS rep and I asked him if he could introduce me to it was proactive, right? So introduce me to the management, do they have management, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, yes, they just got an office set up. So they might be looking for help. So my timing was really good.
Yeah.
And then, so I called them, asked for an interview, and they said, sure, come on in. So on the day of my interview, I'm walking up to the door to open the door. The door pops open. The guy standing right there is my high school basketball coach. He happens to be the sales guy for Sennheiser microphones.
Uh-huh.
So he had a feeling that these guys were going to break. So we said our hellos at the door. I'm there for an interview. And then he poked his head in and said, hey, I know her. She's okay. So 5-minute interview. The thing was 2, 3 questions, and it's like, okay, you'll do. That was it. So I was in the industry.
Wow. So it went from you making money as a DJ as a teenager going into the music industry
From
as a big
radio, college
big
radio, you don't
yeah.
get paid anything, and then you go and work for a band that doesn't have a hit on the planet, and you're making $50 a week,
Uh-huh.
3 days a week. Doesn't that suck? So it went from $100 a night to $50 a week for 3 days a week. But the band exploded in like 4 or 5 months.
So you actually saw that
Potential.
the potential for them.
Yes.
Oh, so you have
Yes.
a talent for
Picking bands.
picking talent.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. So was that an innate ability that you had? You feel like, or
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah. I think it
you
is.
always had that
I think I've always had that.
in doing anything. I mean, anything that you did.
I'd say at the time it was basically in music. I knew I had
Okay.
that. So the logical thing is for me to go and work in music, right? So that's how I ended up eventually working in the major labels.
Okay. So you said you hated. You were offered the VP. Was that before or after? That was after.
That was way after.
And you left. You left the company,
Yeah.
and you said you came
Here.
here.
Yeah.
So what was the decision? I mean, what was the deciding factor for you to come here in the first place? Had you come back and forth?
No, no, no. I've been back to Taiwan once
Okay.
after we immigrated, but I wanted to learn Chinese, and in university, I sort of fall through all the cracks. In Toronto, I fall through all the cracks. So I tried in Sunday school to learn Chinese, but it's taught in Cantonese. So, 我唔識聽，也唔識講, right? So couldn't learn Mandarin that way or read and write. So then I waited until I got into university. I went into Chinese 100. I speak and understand too much. No, you're out. You got to go up to 200. So they pushed me up to the 200 class after a week or so. And then in the 200 class, you had to have a basic vocabulary of 500 words that you can read and write. Well, I couldn't read and write those 500 words. So I got pushed out of that class too.
Oh.
So I ended up dropping a credit that year because that happened, you
But
know?
what's the reason that you wanted to learn Chinese so bad? Because like for me, living abroad in the States, I didn't really want to learn Chinese. And it wasn't until I got to college that I thought I should start learning. But you seem like you
No,
really wanted
it's
to.
more my mother going, you should learn to be more Chinese.
Oh, okay.
Because we've grown up in Canada, so everything I mean, I think up until about 10 years old, I didn't even realize I was Chinese, that I thought my sister was born. Uh, my sister was born a couple of years after we got to Canada. And when she was born, my mother was babysitting one of the kids in our apartment building, and his name was Aaron, and he had blonde hair, blue eyes, and freckles, and he was really cute. He was like 3 years old, I think, at the time. He was really cute, and so he speaks and everything. So I used to see him every day, all the time, and I thought that's what kids look like in Canada, right? Little kids. So when my sister was born, and then my parents brought her home, I looked at her and I wondered why she didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. Truth, you know?
Hmm.
So I had no idea that I was actually Chinese, really Chinese, until I was about 12,
Really?
11 or 12, that I was actually Chinese. Everybody said you're different. Yes, you accept that, except you don't. You're trying to assimilate yourself into everything, right? So I didn't accept that I was different.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really think so much culturally of our Chinese because we spoke English at home.
Right. You didn't have to, your parents didn't make you go to language school or go to,
No, we
Chinese events or
Well, no,
things
no,
like
no,
that
no. My
growing up.
parents weren't that kind of parents.
Okay,
You
they're
know, they're business people. My mother had a store,
mm-hmm.
and then eventually she had two stores. So my dad, after he got off work, he had to go to the other store.
Mm-hmm.
So it was too much for them, so they sold one.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother always had a store when I was growing up. So we didn't see her at home for dinner. Like our meals are basically TV dinners, pot pies, pizza, like whatever you
Oh
could
my goodness.
throw in the oven or cook on the stovetop on your own.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of my mom because my mom went to school and studied. She got like two master's or three master's degrees when we were in elementary, junior high school, and high school. So, us kids ended up taking the responsibility of having to fix dinner. And a lot of times we would cook the TV dinners and things like that. Well, especially my brothers, because it was easy for them, but at least I tried to make a little bit more nutritious food.
Well, it was
But
it was all pretty nutritious, right? Like you just take it out of a box, it's in the freezer section. You read it to see what you're supposed to do, and then you pop it in the oven. We had tons of frozen food that we were having for dinner all the
yeah.
time. So we made sandwiches.
Hmm.
We always buy our favorite deli meats. So when we go shopping with my parents, it's like, okay, well, what do you want at the deli? Oh, we want a bunch of this, bunch of this, bunch of this. So they'd always get what we like. So we had lots of sandwiches at home. We
Hmm.
always had bread. So we never went hungry, but I never had a mother that did that kind of home cooking thing,
Yeah, yeah.
and when my friends talk about it, I'm really envious, right? Because
I,
I don't have a parent like that, right? So
yeah, my mom
we grew up
too.
in restaurants, basically.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, my mom also, she was the Girl Scout leader, the Boy Scout leader, in the universities learning. So we actually got quite independent quite early,
Yeah, we
and
did too.
and it's so
And I have a
different.
little sister.
Oh, so you ended up taking care of.
Well, we had a housekeeper that took care of her until she was about 6, and then she went to school. We moved. She went to school, and then after school, we were taking care of her at home.
Okay.
So yeah, basically, my little sister grew up with me. She was like my shadow.
Mm.
Everybody I know knows her. Everybody in the music industry I know knows her because she used to just follow me and go everywhere.
Is she in the music industry?
No,
Oh, she just
no.
followed you around.
But everybody knows her. So,
Okay.
if she just wanders off someplace, they'll bring her back and say she's in the wrong place. It's like, okay, sorry.
Okay. So, back to you really wanting to learn Mandarin, and the only way that you thought you could do it was to come back to Taiwan, and that was your
Assimilation,
motivation.
osmosis. That's the
Okay.
way I kind of figured it. And my mother, she had, at this point, she had lots of friends that had sons. My husband, my current husband, he was my boyfriend at the time. He had proposed to me before I left Canada. And everybody, all my friends, my father, my sister, my brother, all said, yeah, he's a great guy. My mother, no, he's a foreigner. I want you to marry a Taiwanese guy, Chinese guy at least. Didn't take. I dated a bunch of Chinese guys, but it just didn't take. So I figure, okay, well, I'll come back for 6 months, learn some Chinese, get this out of my mother's system, at least to say that, I listened to you to do this, but in the end, it's going to be my decision anyways, right? But at least make her happy. So I came back here and she introduced me to all her friends' sons and everything and tried to, it's like, male light bien. Right?
Oh, so you actually had to deal with
did.
that.
I actually went to meet them all.
Oh my gosh.
And,
I mean, I didn't have to
like,
do that. I'm so
no,
glad.
it's just demoralizing. It was just.
So how many blind dates were you
No, they weren't
set up?
blind dates. They were all at, her friends' houses. So it's like
Right.
their sons are there every time I went to visit. So when
So
we
it was
went to
always-
visit, it was always there. Oh, this is my son. He's this. It was all, yes, they're perfectly great candidates for people who are looking for that kind of relationship. I'm not. I think I'm a pretty different individual just from my choices in life and my choices in career. I think I'm very independent minded. I have my own opinion of everything, and it's not something a Chinese guy could really accept as a wife that has too much opinions about too many things.
Well, I wonder if it's because, is it your personality character, or is it because you grew up and lived in Canada in a Western environment?
I think it's both.
Both.
Yeah. And the other side of that too is also, you have to think about this, right? It's like, if you marry somebody, you're not just marrying him, you're marrying their family too. This is a Chinese society. You're marrying their family. So do I want my mother's friend's family in my life forever? No, absolutely not. Right? So this is the first thing that crossed my mind. I'm sitting there thinking, just
in your business.
yes, like they're gonna be in your business, especially it's her and her best friend, one of her best friends, right?
Gosh, no.
That's a nightmare. I mean, if you think about it, you have no privacy,
Yeah.
right? So lots of this stuff crossed my mind, and it's just, no, it's just not for me. It's really just not for me. So, but I stayed here for the 6-month sentence that I thought it was going to be, and then Misadventure made me stay here longer.
Okay, so which misadventure was that?
Well, the plane ticket that I came here on was only good for 90 days. It was 6 months before I was leaving the island. And then so when I went to the airport, they said, oh, your plane ticket's expired. This is like physical ticket at the time, right? So there's some code on there that says it's a 90-day ticket. And I said, well, my mother got this for me. She knew I was going to be here for 6 months. So it's just an oversight. So we sent it back to my mother's friend, Yang Mama, who owns the travel agency, right? And then, so, but now I've overstayed because that's the last day on my visa. So I went to the police station the next day to see what's up. And then they looked at my passport and said, no, you have to go. I said, I tried to leave yesterday. They wouldn't let me get on the plane, right? So I explained the whole situation. And then they said, well, maybe you can reinstate your citizenship.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, that would be really great. How do we go about doing that then? So I can stay here legally. Because by that time, 6 months in Taiwan, I really liked Taiwan already. I wouldn't mind staying for a little bit longer. I didn't know it was going to be forever.
Well, what was it about Taiwan that you really liked? That, because a lot of people, it seems like they come to Taiwan, like for myself, 6 months turns into seven years now. But a lot of foreigners that also come and
32
visit.
for me.
32 for you? Oh my gosh. Yeah, so what was it about Taiwan that made you feel like this is where I want to be?
It's the people are nice. The people are really, really nice. They're really, really trying to be very helpful, and they're very patient with you. And it was actually not a bad place to live. I love the food. I mean, everything I had, all the street food, brought back all my childhood memories, right? So all the street food that we had eaten as a kid. I'm like, when I tried something, I'm like, oh, I remember this from, I'd taste something and I'd remember what it was, but I didn't know what it was at the time. But once you found it and you tasted it, you're like, oh, this is so good. You know, so it would bring back a lot of, you know, childhood. I was born in Taipei, so, you know, and then we moved to Tainan for a few years, and then we moved back to Taipei. So I remember, and Tainan's the food capital of Taiwan, basically. So they had lots and lots of really good.
Taipei.
No, no, no. It's actually Tainan.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Learned
It's
something
actually
new
Tainan.
today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm working on a show for, this is an aside, but for a Philippine network. So they're going to feature some of the foods of Taiwan. But Taiwan being the food capital of Asia, they figure that Taiwan's got some really great food. And so they asked me, what do you think is the food capital? I said, it's Tainan. For sure, to me, it's Tainan. And then they said, yes, their research tells them it's Tainan too. So, okay, good. So it's, there's tons of stuff that originated out of Tainan.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
because
Wow.
Tainan was the old capital,
Okay.
right? So
So you just mentioned about a show. So that's you were doing producing and things at that time, or did you start Great East West Entertainment Group at that time, or you had a lot of
no,
things
no,
in
no. At that
between?
time, I was still, I hadn't gotten my citizenship or anything, but after I got my citizenship, I went back to working in music. And then the lights came on for me. Like, people are offering me jobs. The CEO was, you know, interviewing me. So it's like, you know, what job would you like? And then go, shit, what job did I apply for? Okay, any job but
Must be
mine.
nice.
Any job but mine. The lights went on,
Oh,
right? Any job but mine. You can write your own ticket,
wow.
you know? So my background is so unique. And there's nobody like me in the music industry here. So everybody wanted to hire me.
Because I think you are really knowledgeable in technology relating to music as well too, or something. Or did you?
There's a lot of, well, in my school background, I
Okay.
also studied computer science for 2 years.
Ah,
And this is when a computer filled a whole room, you know, and you had to use bubble cards to write your programs.
before Steve Jobs or
Yeah,
Jobs or
before there
something
was
like
any of that, right? So I had actually studied computer science using bubble cards to write my programs, you know. And so old days of tech, but I'd always been sort of keeping my hand in technology to see where it would go. So, and that brings you into like multitudes of industries. So after I left music, I went into a .com, and then I went into that's technology, but it's shopping, it's online, right?
here in
And then
Taiwan.
here in Taiwan, well, it's a U.S. New York-based company.
Okay.
The owners are Taiwanese. Bao, United Daily News.
Oh,
So part of that group, anyways. And then after that, I started my own technology company because I'm like, this isn't so hard. We already built all this for them. It's not that hard. So I started my own little technology company after that. And then, but all in between all of this, I'd always been cherry picking projects to work on as far as film and TV. So I would pick maybe one project a year. If I wasn't that busy, I'd pick one. When when I was working at EMI, I had a Sandy Cable. I had my own TV show. So I wrote it, I produced it, I
wow.
directed it. The only thing I didn't do, I edited it, and then the only thing I didn't do was the voiceover. It was all done in Chinese. But it was a way for me to market a lot of my music priorities, right? So I did a music magazine,
Okay.
right? And it's on videotape. I have it now, some of it in digital because the videotapes all fell apart. So, but that
VHS are those? What are those?
VHS,
Yeah.
yeah, VHS
Oh my gosh.
cassettes, yeah.
Those are...
So I had
I
some
remember
of them
those.
transferred. Yeah, I had some of them transferred, but quite a few of them broke, you know, so. But we had 13 episodes as one season.
So that you wrote and
I
directed
wrote,
yourself.
directed, produced, and edit.
Okay. Wow.
Sat down.
See, this is all the other hats that you wear that I didn't mention at the beginning.
I already know how to do all that from all the other stuff that I'd done before
Right.
that, right? So, but when I was at EMI, I did that proper for television here. And then so after that, I cherry picked different projects, you know. And then, so I always kept my hand in it. It was never going to leave me. It's kind of a hobby, right? But something I do very well as a hobby. And then after my thing with technology, I just decided to come back and do something I really just enjoy doing. And then I was offered a series of six videos for Jet Li's YouTube channel.
Jet Li's YouTube channel.
Yeah,
Wow.
Jet Li has a YouTube channel.
Okay.
So, and he has like, I don't know, 200 million followers or something like that. It was
When
something
did he
ridiculous.
start that? Was that when he was still in China, or he still lives in China?
He still lives in China.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It's
he
just
just,
YouTube blocked in China.
no, it's not. It wasn't at the
Okay,
time.
at the time. Oh,
So, he wanted to sort of have a legacy. So I talked to the guy that runs Jet Li's office here, and basically gave him an idea, and I said, how about, you do something behind a theme, like the hero and all of us. I just sort of made this up on the spot, and then sort of gave him an idea of what some of the stories might be, because they're people I already know in the martial arts community, and then I sort of like fleshed that out a little bit more. They liked the theme a lot, and they ended up having other people write stuff to contribute to this, but I ended up doing six short documentary films for them, and the subjects are all very different, not in, but different martial arts and in different countries.
okay. So Jet Li was in every single one of them, and you guys would just travel and
No,
oh
he was not in any of them.
oh
He wanted to have a channel that could showcase different
martial
types of
arts.
martial arts.
Okay, I see.
And you tell their story, right? So there was a guy in Sweden, Norway, he's 30 something years old, and he was the best there was in the country, but for some health reasons, he couldn't continue anymore. But instead of throwing it all in, he continued to nurture that, I guess, martial art in Norway, right? He's a Wusu guy.
Okay, so
Wusu
he's
champion.
Asian or Caucasian,
He's Norwegian.
Norwegian,
Yeah.
but okay.
Yeah. So I found his story, and then I talked to him, and then talked about how maybe we might want to shoot the documentary. I hired a documentary filmmaker in Norway, and then followed him around for a week. And then, all of these we did. We did one in Norway, we did one in Washington, D.C., we did one in Rio. He's an MMA fighter, actually very well known MMA fighter.
Okay.
And the day before we were shooting it, the night before we were shooting, his partner of that dojo that he set up, his partner's son was gunned down in one of the slums in Rio.
Oh,
So it happened the night before, and it happened right outside their dojo. So that whole area became a crime scene. So when we rolled up to the place, it was like we weren't allowed near it. But we're supposed to be here filming, So that was kind of different. It was very, very different day. But
right.
I didn't go to any of these places. I just did the whole thing remotely.
Okay.
So I'm in a totally different time zone from where they are, but I just do everything remotely. We could. I mean, the technology was already there, so I use a lot of technology to help me do what I do.
So before COVID, you were already doing remote work and
Yeah,
things
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. So,
Yeah.
so I mean, projects like that. I know you've done a lot of projects. You started the East West Entertainment Group. That was after. I mean,
That was
what was
actually all of that was for music stuff in the beginning.
really? So
Yeah.
when did you decide? Hey, I'm going to sit down
And do films full
do
time,
this myself, and yeah.
starting with the Jet Li 6.
Okay, so that
And
was
then
the
after
moment.
that, I mean, I have all my friends are in entertainment. They're either in TV and film or they're in music. Okay, they're touring professionals to producers, makeup artists, costume designers, like music, score, they write this kind of stuff. Like, they all work in this industry. So anytime somebody has something for like Asia, they call Caroline, talk to Caroline. So this is how all this started for me, right?
Right.
And so everybody refers them to me, and then I decide if I want to take on the project or not. And most of the time it's not, but I keep an ear out, but I would pass it on to somebody else. I would find somebody else that might be interested in it. So I would usually help them out, but if it's something that interests me, I would take the case. But if it's something that's not interesting to me, I don't bother.
Right.
Even with like shoots that come here, I don't take on every shoot. Like there's been quite a few shoots I've turned down this year. I had 12 this year, so it's a little bit much.
Well, I don't know. You seem to be always busy before COVID. You were always busy with shoots and things.
Yeah, well, this year it's come back.
Yeah, well,
It's been very, very
good.
busy year, right? So it is good, but it's also very busy.
Yeah.
So,
Well, out of like the many projects that you've been involved in throughout the years, which one has really stuck out in your mind in terms of something that you were super proud of? Was it the Jet Li series, or was it something else that you've
I'm really
done?
proud of those, but there's other shoots that have been really challenging. Like I did a show called Peking Express and Asia Express. So the premise of it is like The Amazing Race, but on steroids. So the contestants get €1 per person per day
Right.
to eat, sleep, and live. Eat, sleep, and wherever you go for transport, and you still have to finish all your games and challenges,
Right.
right?
What was the takeoff on the U.S. Amazing Race before?
No,
But
it's not. It's actually much harder
really,
because yeah,
right, because
because
of the $1 limit
we don't
kind of deal.
arrange transport for them to get from A to B. We do not give them hotels overnight, and we do not give them food. So they have to go and manage all of that on their own.
Manage everything for themselves.
And here's the funny thing. The people who participate in these are all celebrities from their own country.
Okay.
Right. So the
Right.
first one I did, Peking Express, was for an Italian network, and then the second one I did is for Ukrainian network. No, not the Ukrainians. Romanian network.
Romanian, yeah.
Romanian network. And so at the end of like 3 months of shooting, they become professionals at begging, basically. Right. Right? Like professionals at begging.
Right.
So it's very interesting. But setting up a shoot like this where it goes like from the south of the island all the way to the north, it's challenging. So when we did the scouting trip with their producers and their story writers, right? It took a month. I brought them to like 200 locations to see if they wanted to use it. They'd have to look at it. What can we do there? How far is it off the path of something? It has to be a certain miles away from like the main highway because they didn't want them cheating and using the highway to travel from north to south, right?
Right.
They needed to use these little off roads, which means that there has to be something they can do off of these. So we're trying to create the path for them to do these things too, right? So it was, but at the end of a month of scouting, in the middle of August, I have to say, bad time to be doing scouting. It's so hot. They picked 80 some odd of them and used it in the show.
Wow.
So they were
Really
here.
showcase Taiwan.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, it really does. And it's from south to north. So every single municipality is involved, so it's better to go from south to north than north to south, just because you're flying in with all this equipment. Like it was 200 and some odd pieces of baggage and then 80 some odd people. They chartered a flight. It was so much. They had to charter a flight, right? So they came in. It's easier to clear them through a smaller airport than the 3 giant terminals in Taoyuan, right? So it was easier for us to do it from the south. So I was the country producer for both of those. And then, so that's a really big challenge. That was one of them. The other one was just something we did recently is we filmed in a prison, in a men's prison in Taichung.
Okay,
That's
must
gotta
have had
be
to
the-
go through some channels to
That's
get.
got to be the most hoop jumping you do for getting permission to film somewhere.
Yeah, because prisons, I feel like, in my mind, prisons are not really a very lovely place or a very, happy place. And stuff like that in an Asian culture, to have it shown out to the public, I would think that would be a lot of resistance to.
Very difficult, right?
Uh-huh.
I've applied for another show before for the prison, and we were turned away. I knew we were going to turn away just from the way that they framed the whole thing. So I asked this German network to just leave it to me. I'll frame it a certain way, and then you tell me if that's okay. And then they said yes to it. And then I sent the paperwork through. And I made tons of phone calls. This was tons of phone calls, really. It was just between judicial, I guess, defang, so the Taiwan government, and then the jail. So tons of communication between all this. And then we were allowed to go in to shoot. It was like we have to sit there and, include a whole bunch of things that they want us to showcase. We'll come and film it, but it's not going to necessarily make the cut. Like, I'm not the one that decides on the cut. We will come and film it. And then even between them, they've got problems with communication, right? So I can't help that, right?
Yeah, because it kind of reminds me of a project that we were trying to set up. It's if you have one location's people talking about this, or the government official talking about this, but then they're not in cahoots or in communication with the other person in that could be related to what you're trying to shoot. It's such a mess because the communication for different departments don't necessarily jive.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you have a lot of that with your shoot.
Tons.
Tons and tons.
Tons.
Yeah. So the project is done.
It's done. We
with
finished, and it's the final edit came out yesterday, actually.
Okay. Oh, very cool.
I sent them the link, and I already got a phone call complaining about why wasn't this or this included in it. And so they're thinking, if I can only explain something to you, if you were only there, you would understand why some of it's not there.
Right.
So
yeah, it's a lot of rigmarole. So in terms of this, because there's a lot of red tape, maybe, or maybe not a lot, but there is some red tape that has to be had for coming to film in Taiwan. So as a destination for international companies that want to come to film here, based on the challenges that you have had in terms of filming in Taiwan, is it a viable thing to?
I think filming in Taiwan is actually really easy compared to other countries. I think it's for most productions, the most important thing is you have to have a producer that has connections in a lot of agencies in the government. So just you showing up and saying, oh, I want to apply for something, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to actually give it to you. If they know you and you have a track record, or if you've included them in some of your major productions, right, they're more inclined to allow you to shoot. Or they're also more inclined to assign someone to you to expedite things for you as well. So, and they also look at the amount of exposure that Taiwan's going to get from the international audience on what they're shooting. So they're looking for all of that. So anything that you accept from abroad, you can't put Taiwan in a very bad light either. You have to be able to frame it in such a way. You have to be able to massage it a little so that it's going to put Taiwan in a better light than what they were thinking.
Okay, but is that kind of like the same thing as China is trying to do in terms of making themselves look in a, I don't know if this is a taboo topic,
No,
making the country, in a lot better light than it is, and they don't allow.
No.
Yeah, it's nothing like that.
China
right?
is about disinformation.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so they purposely mislead you. Okay, we're not misleading anybody. We're just pushing you towards a more positive story than the negative one that you want to talk about. So we're pushing you more towards a positive one. All of these are real, but it's just what perspective do you want to give, right? So obviously the one that's more positive for Taiwan would be better, right? So I always sort of, nudge them in that direction. They're not always receptive to it, and it's not my show. I can only suggest things, right? So 9 out of 10 people who want to come and film here, they have no idea what they want to film. They have a small idea, It's the tip of the iceberg, but the rest of the iceberg is non-existent. You're the rest of the iceberg. So you have to give them stuff that's going to fill that for them, you know?
Right.
So they're relying on your experience to help them, you know, you better be a good storyteller. Where's the story coming from? You know, so the more information, especially for me, I'm a producer, so the more information I have about where you want this to go, where's the story going, where's your story arc, what are your different story arcs, right? So if I could put all of that together for you, I will in some way, and include more things in Taiwan that's going to help you with that,
Right.
right?
I feel like sometimes people that come to Taiwan or before they come to Taiwan, they don't really realize that Taiwan is such a thriving international city too. Either maybe they think we're Thailand or something, but when they get here and see that it is very modern and people have,
Yeah.
you know, it's a great place to be, great place to live. It's an international restaurants, whatever.
Yeah.
That's
Because
here.
when people just sit there and use Asia, like just Asia in general, they think of Thailand and the Philippines and Indonesia because those are three countries that have had a lot of international film productions go and film there, right? So 007's been in all those countries
Oh,
filming, right?
and
So
not Taiwan?
they have a, no, not Taiwan, but they have a very good idea of what Asia looks like from those, and that's their preconception of it. But
Right.
you want to show them something different. So the shows that have been filming here, all the people that come here before they came here, after they landed, they kind of looked around and said, "Wow, it's a lot more modern than I thought." I said, "What were you thinking? You know, 007?" Like as soon as I say that, they're like, "Oh yeah, okay, sorry." You know.
Yeah, I remember one of my friends said when she was moving to Taiwan. Oh, actually, it happened to me too when I was in Honolulu and I want to move to Taiwan, and people are saying, "Make sure you take the ketchup, or make sure you take the soy sauce, or show you as we would say in Hawaii."
Right.
And I'm like, okay, come on, people.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that I miss that you know you can't get as easily here as back in the States or Canada or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Over-the-counter drugs, ibuprofen, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Okay, so what's coming up for East West Entertainment Group? Is there anything exciting in the works?
Well, I have I do a lot of brand work for L'Oreal Group. So we've shot quite a few of their corporate trainings, internal videos that they show in the store. So for fashion and for style, and we've shot that around Asia, like not just in Taiwan, but a lot of it in Japan we shot too. So there's quite a few of those coming up next year, and then we've got probably a couple of other TV shows that's in development at the moment that they're interested in filming in Taiwan. So we're trying to put all the pieces together for two different shows. One's a film and one's a show.
Okay,
So we've got three things that we got right now that probably take place between now and April.
nice.
Yeah.
Which countries are they? Are they local projects? Or
One's French,
French?
right? And the other two are coming from the Philippines.
Okay, oh nice.
Because I was the first one to do a co-production between Taiwan and the Philippines, right? So,
Yeah, I was in it.
yes. So they you know, they seek me out to help them with a
Nice.
bunch of other stuff too. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So thanks, Caroline, for coming in and sharing some of your story with us.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
We'll have to have you come back and tell us some of your other crazy adventures.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Thank you all for sharing your time with us. See you next time.
Bye-bye.